So at this point, I want to open it up to the public.
So the first person will be Mr. Shaw, Anthony Shaw.
Sure. My name is Anthony Shaw, and I live at 23 Milwaukee Drive.
Okay.
I just wanted to read into the record some comments from an actual member of this congregation. It's an email that was public record submitted to the mayor and to the village board, and I'd like to read their comments word for word. Okay, so it says, greetings. We would like to appeal to all those involved in amending the law to legalize places of worship on a personal level. Being a member of the Orthodox Jewish community, we fully support the notion. However, paramount concern to us is our family's safety, which cannot be compromised under any circumstances. I live on Weiss Terrace. Weiss Terrace is a tranquil cul-de-sac off Scotland Road. The block has no sidewalks, and buses are not permitted to drive on Weiss Terrace to pick up and drop off the school children. Every morning starting at 6:45 until 8:30 and afternoon from 3:45 until 6:45, there are beautiful children walking to and from their bus stops at the corner of Scotland Road and Weiss Terrace. Can you fathom the immense danger our children would be placed in if there were to be at least 75 vehicles navigating the block before and after services on a daily basis? We are besides ourselves with worry if a place of worship were to be built on our cul-de-sac, or any cul-de-sac for that matter. Additionally, Weiss Terrace and many other cul-de-sacs in our neighborhood are off a double yellow street, Scotland Road. There are no outlets off these cul-de-sacs. They are lone blocks off of the busy street. There is but one access point to enter and exit the blocks off the cul-de-sacs, and this creates a huge problem with the overflow of parking from any proposed parking lot. Both the stationary and moving vehicles pose a huge traffic and safety nightmare on the block. Children, adults, and pets will be put into a precarious position by being forced to walk in the center of the street due to the fact that the curb space will not be available. Another serious point to consider with significance to Weiss Terrace is that it is a blind corner off Scotland Road. The inherent danger of a mass entrance and exit off Weiss Terrace is magnified significantly. This safety point was the nail in the coffin for a proposed plan to allow a curb cut onto Scotland Road for a loading dock and parking lot for only 30 employees. A number of our local residents attended a hearing in September 2018 and were witness to the planning board's concern for the safety of the residents of Weiss Terrace and Matthew Drive. Based on the safety concerns of those residents, the planning board highly discouraged any consideration of their proposed plan. Along these lines of increased traffic onto and off Scotland Road and the enormous safety concerns of the residents of Weiss Terrace, the planning board's recommendations on that project must be considered. And that's the gist of the letter. And again, this is a resident on Weiss Terrace who is a member of that congregation and submitted this email to the mayor and to our village board.
Andrew Ritter at 7 Weiss Terrace.
Okay.
That ridge, right across the street from where the project will take place.
Right.
And as a resident for many years on the street, I'm finding the project to be a very interesting design. And I really appreciate the detailed attention that the board is paying to the project. I really, I appreciate that. And my sense about Mr. Strauss is that the engineer, as the engineer, he'll do a fine job. It says, is the proposed action consistent with the predominant character of the existing built or natural landscape? And it's checked yes. And I'm questioning that because it doesn't seem like it's consistent with what is on the street already, although I do like the design of the project. That's one thing. And the other is 8A in that same environmental assessment. Will the proposed action result in a substantial increase in traffic above present levels? Which is checked no, which I'm confused about too, because I'm sure there will be. We've been talking for quite a while about the parking. So I just would like to know how important is that short environmental assessment and why those questions are checked, seems to me, incorrectly. Except for one other question, I was wondering if the project includes a mikveh.
It's my opinion and understanding that religious uses are found to be desirable and appropriate uses in residential neighborhoods. So even though one is not located at this location. It's been pointed out that there's a religious use nearby, and that's the basis of my answering that question, yes. That it would be consistent with the residential neighborhood. And in answer to item number 8, I answered no to the traffic because it's our belief that most of the congregants will walk to this facility most of the time. But I think based on the discussion on at the planning board workshop, I won't speak for Max Stock, but I'm going to speculate that he might ask me to revise that and check yes. I think that the mikveh was once proposed but has now been eliminated.
Okay, and
I'd like to check that and make sure that I'm answering it correctly, though.
okay.
Yaakov Rubin, 5 Weiss Terrace. Yeah, I wanted to echo the sentiments that were raised in the letter that Mr. Shout read. I'm a member of the synagogue as well, and I think that while the parking, for example, may now be as of right, but speaking from experience at 750, the 50 spots for 100 plus members during the week, everybody drives to, unless you're like right across the street like I am, everybody's going to drive. And the 50 spots are going to be wholly inadequate and certainly don't give any consideration to future growth. And the overflow parking onto Weiss will become the residents' burden. We shouldn't have to petition the town for no parking signs. And very often the residents need to park on the streets. And with I feel it's definitely will be inadequate. The safety concerns are also, they passed the law and they made this as of right and everything lines up, but they're not giving practical consideration to the fact that these are both cul-de-sacs and the only method of ingress and egress is off Scotland, which is already a dangerous cul-de-sac, which is already a dangerous street rather. And for example, the UNITA project wasn't even given consideration to have an artery onto Scotland because it's just very dangerous, and to have all these cars coming in and out without, this is not a street like Eastbourne or where there are other methods of ingress and egress. It's just, the only method is to come out in and out onto Scotland. And I don't think that this was considered when they passed these laws as a matter of right. So I would just echo that I am a member and I do share these concerns. The children, right now, the buses don't come down the street because it's a cul-de-sac and it's not designed for this kind of traffic, just with the residents as is. And bringing, 80 cars morning, noon, and afternoon, it's just, I see it as very problematic.
Okay, is there anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Berkowitz, would you please state your address for the record, please?
Sure, Matthew Berkowitz, 36 Lawrence Place. Our community has spent several years searching for an ideal location that would be suitable as a house of worship for our congregation, which is both necessary and vital, while at the same time keeping the impact on the surrounding neighborhood to a bare minimum. I believe that the project currently before the planning board accomplishes these objectives for several reasons, including the following. By combining 2 lots that are accessible from 2 different streets, this will allow for traffic coming and leaving the synagogue to be divided between 2 different streets, which will limit congestion. These 2 lots were purchased at a significant cost to the community to allow for ample on-site parking. We will only be asking for minimal variances, primarily technical in nature. We will not be asking for variances on the 10-foot landscaping surrounding the premises as a buffer to the neighbors, nor will we seek a variance for the 50-foot setback for the parking lot, so the parking lot will not be in close vicinity to the street. We will not be requesting a variance for overall parking requirements, as the required parking will be accommodated within the shul parking lot. By zeroing in on 2 properties located in the center of the neighborhood, this will help reduce vehicular traffic, since many congregants live within a short walking distance of the synagogue. These are really only a few key points that highlight some of the positive attributes of this project, both to the local congregants and to the community at large. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to speak before you in support of the proposed House of Worship plans at 6 Weiss Terrace and 8 Roxbury Court. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chris Dufault, 4 Weiss Terrace. I live on the property directly north to where this development is being proposed. First of all, I'm in agreement with the letter that was read at the beginning of the public comments. Secondly, I have a couple points now about the design. There is an existing drainage problem where that property grades down to my property near the street, near Weiss Terrace. It's right next to 6 Weiss. Okay, I just want to make you aware of that because I lost a tree to it this spring when it turned into a pond. I agree that the parking that's currently at 750 Chestnut Ridge needs to be assessed to compare to what the parking is that they're proposing, because what they're proposing is not nearly enough to handle the number of cars that are parked at 750 all weekend, because they can't be driven once they get there. Finally, the fencing and the trees.
Yes.
Rather than having a plastic fence run down right near my property line with evergreens that have roots that are going to impede into my property line and that are going to create a massive amount of shade on my property on the side that I have a garden on, I would prefer those trees and fence be moved closer to the parking lot if this is going to go forward. I would rather see them around the parking lot going straight down the property than along my property line.
Well, we could look at that, but it'll be up to the planning board as to where the fence will go, if there is a fence, and where the trees will go.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Les DeSources. I am...
what is your address?
I'm at 9 Weiss Terrace.
Okay.
I am the neighbor of Andrea Rita.
Yes.
I believe you mentioned that there are other neighborhood place of worship in the village. Do you have a list of lessons learned from those other locations?
No.
Okay.
We don't have a list of other locations that are being used as houses of worship or synagogues. We are going to look at this project as a standalone project based on local law number 1 of 2019.
Well, based on what I've heard today, I do have some concerns. Concerns about traffic, concern about the parking situation, and also concerns about noise pollution during demolition and the impact of the wetland after this construction, because the wetland is behind my backyard as well.
Okay, so they'll look into that. Is there anything else?
Services. What recourse do we have for the traffic situation on Weiss Terrace if that becomes an issue?
Okay, right now I can't answer that. All we're doing is taking comments from the public who are raising this as an issue, and we will look into it.
My name is Sharon Vash. I'm on 10 Beckett. I'm not near Roxbury. I'm not near that synagogue at all. However, I have a couple of general questions, so I'll just shoot. Are they going to have a catering hall? Is that permitted?
They're not allowed to have a kitchen with the
Neighborhood synagogue?
You're right. They're allowed to have a warming kitchen. They can bring food in and just reheat it, but they can't have a kitchen where they would have a caterer there to hold I think weddings or bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, ufrufs, any of those other.
Okay, I'm asking because where I live there is no synagogue behind me, but there are people who hold events, and the noise level and the lights they've installed in their homes are very distracting to their neighbors. So I don't know if there's I don't know how many lumens is too bright.
Well, that's something
but I'm thinking about the people who are going to live there looking at an ugly white vinyl fence. But
Well,
The
we
lights
haven't-
can be very distracting to people. I know I have lights behind me that wake up people in my home.
Okay, well, that's something that we look at, and because of the residences that are on both sides, the lighting that will be proposed here will attempt to shield the homes that are adjacent to it.
Okay, and the architecture of that building, will the architecture of that building blend in with the neighborhood?
They have to provide a architectural design that the architectural review board will review to see if they feel that the design of the building fits in with the other homes that are in the neighborhood on that street. Yes.
Okay, and the last thing, I know they're worried about the cars. Are they worried about the walkers who block traffic?
Is who worried about it?
The planning board, you take into consideration that they need sidewalks, that people shouldn't be.
There are no sidewalks on that
There's
street.
going to be a lot of pedestrians on Shabbat, and there's going to be a lot of pedestrians on holidays, but there are still going to be people who drive. So they need some way of protecting the pedestrians.
Well, there are no sidewalks there, and I don't know whether part of our review process would require sidewalks to be installed. They'd have to take property away from the homeowners. They couldn't make the street narrower than it is. And there are sidewalks on Eastbourne Drive on the west side of the street, and a lot of the religious people, they don't walk on the sidewalks. They walk in the street. That's their own choice, and they walk in the street where there are sidewalks that they could walk on.
This I know too.
Yeah. Next person.
You hear us?
Yeah,
Yes.
please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Denise Bakula, and I live at 6 Roxbury Court, next to the future temple. Okay. Many questions. I have grandchildren that play on this street, and there's a ton of kids on this street. There's going to be an amazing amount of traffic. I know for a fact that almost 100 cars park at that temple right now. I'm on the side of the parking lot. What are you going to do about congestion, environmental fumes, garbage smells, lighting coming in to our bedroom windows? Did anybody take any of that into consideration about the people who live next door? You know what? I'm sure none of you would want to be living next to this temple because this is going to cause major problems for the neighbors.
Well, I'll try to answer some of the things that you mentioned. First of all, in terms of lighting, we will attempt to ensure that lighting, like in their parking lot and on the sides of the building, that will provide security and safety for people if they're at this temple in the evening when it's dark, so they could walk safely to their cars or walk safely off the site to walk home. In terms of the lighting, we will attempt to make sure that it's shielded, that it doesn't shine into the homes on either side of this synagogue. In terms of odors and garbage, depending on how often they provide food for any services that they have, like Shabbat or any other religious services where they bring food in, their garbage will need to be collected. And I'm not sure if the existing plan right now, I believe it shows a dumpster location. Stuart, it shows a dumpster location.
Where?
I'm sorry?
What side?
It's on the, if I may, Mr. Chairman, it's on the Weiss Terrace side, on the northerly side of the parking area.
We haven't gotten into all these details. There is one there. The size will be determined when we get into further review of the project. What was the other item that you mentioned?
The children in almost every house on this street. There's going to be cars speeding down here left and right. You know what? I don't think you took this into consideration.
Well, let me just stop you. Are you aware of the fact that when the village proposed to enact some sort of regulations to allow these, okay, that they held public hearings in the middle school There were at least two. There might have been a third one where they explained what they were proposing. They had members of the village's planning consultants explain the regulations, how they developed them. It was opened up to the public, where members of the public could ask questions and speak for or against the project. Some people spoke for it, some spoke against it, some asked a lot of questions, and then at an end of a certain period of time, the trustees of the village voted on regulations which have been enacted, is referred to as Local Law 1 of 2019. This planning board has to follow those regulations, whether we agree with them, like them or not. It's a law and we have to follow them. Whether all of these considerations were looked into, you would have to, if you were at those meetings, I don't know whether you attended or not, you would have heard all the discussions. Whether they considered all of these things or not, I don't know. I did not attend all those meetings. Well, I did attend the first one, but not the second or the third one. So I don't know whether members of the public raised some of these issues to the Board of Trustees. In any event, they proposed these regulations, and they've been enacted in law right now, and we have to follow them as the planning board. That's our job. We can't deviate from them. I don't think that we can deny an application if they follow all the regulations that are in this local law. And
okay,
that's
so
something. Let me finish. That's something that Mr. Baum is going to have to answer for us if there are specific comments that are raised by the public with concerns that they have about traffic and school buses and possible insufficient parking. How do we handle that in terms of the law, whether a project can be not approved based on these considerations? Can we consider these things, or do we have to follow the items in the regulations and not consider anything that's not in local law number 1 of 2019?
You asked me if I went to.
No, that's a question for Mr. Baum, who's the attorney for the planning board.
Okay, but you had asked me if I'd gone to any of these meetings. There's not one person in my cul-de-sac that even knew that this was coming. You know, like they were all surprised. They didn't know until they saw the surveyor outside.
No, wait a second. Were you aware that the village held these public meetings to go over their proposal to enact a law of this type?
Knew about the law, yes, but I didn't know that it was going to be next door to me. I didn't know a thing about this plan until I saw them surveying outside. I'm just concerned about the noise level, the cars, the pollution, the garbage, the lighting. I mean, you have to take that into, consideration. Like you wouldn't want to live next door to something like that. So I need to know what they're going to do about it. That's all. So. Okay,
but I answered your question about the lighting. That's something that we will look into in an attempt to ensure that the lighting does not affect the neighbors to the north and the south. In terms of the garbage, we'll look into that. I don't know how much garbage will be accumulated on a weekly basis. It'll have to be removed, I guess, by a commercial carter. In terms of the traffic, yes, there's going to be cars going into both Roxbury and Weiss Terrace to go into the parking lot. That's what the parking lot is there for. We understand that.
I know, you're in a residential area living next door to a parking lot. Who would have ever thought that, they would take a cul-de-sac, break it apart, and live next to a parking lot? It's terrible.
Okay, but I'm going to tell you that the state of New York says that houses of worship belong in residential zoning districts.
Parking lots next to them. Okay, that's fine.
I'm just trying to tell you whatever information that we have.
Okay.
And because of that, whether it's a church, a mosque, or a synagogue, or some other religious institution, they could build it in a residential district. The village does have a regulation where it came from the town of Ramapo that all churches, synagogues, and mosques, all religious institutions had to be built on 5 acres of land or more. And the village felt that could be challenged in court, and they proposed local law number 1 of 2019, and we're forced to follow it as a planning board.
I understand that. But you have to see where, as a resident of this village for like 40 something years, you can see how upsetting it is to be living next door to a parking lot with all the chaos, when you have little kids and stuff. But that's not your problem. That's my problem, obviously. But I thank you. I'm just also concerned about them parking on the street because, I can't have the street blocked up because then you can never have any company because all the spots will be taken on a Saturday. So that's another issue. You really have to look into that overcrowding that, going into the cul-de-sac, and letting cars park there because 50 cars that parking lot is too small for that congregation. You could see it from the congregation that they have now in the amount of cars.
Okay.
So it's only going to grow.
Okay.
It's just something to look into. The parking lot is not going to be able to handle that. You have no room for growth. But you know what? It's up to you guys. You're the planning board. So thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, my name is Jerry Liebelson. I'm at 31 Midway Road. I just want to just make a couple of relatively brief comments. One is that people should be aware, the board as well as the members of the public should be aware of the schedule of activity that is going to be taking place at this building. We're talking, and please, if someone knows differently, please correct me if I'm wrong. Well, you're talking about activity that'll take place 7 days a week, mornings and evenings, with cars in the morning and evening, as well as late at night for Talmudic study. On top of that, you're also going to have, as a neighborhood place of worship, they will hold. They can use it as a social hall, so there will be occasional and of varying frequency, very large numbers, very large receptions there, whether it's bar mitzvahs, whether it's weddings, whatever it is. We see this all over the village at the other illegal, informal places of worship. So my point here is that the character of the whole character of this street, of that whole block neighborhood, is going to change dramatically. Okay, and so no one should be surprised about that. The second thing I want to say regarding parking, which is to me is always the biggest problem with this stuff, is that the place of worship law, local law number 1, 2019, does not address on-street parking at all, which means all that they require is that if you're a neighborhood place of worship, then you have to have all your, quote, you cannot have off-site parking, which does not mean on-street. It means parking in somebody else's garage. Everything has to be your parking has to be on the site, but you could still have parking overflow on the street. And in order to, and people talk about petitioning, well, you have to, if one person objects to that petition, you can't stop the parking. So the other effect of this development is you're going to see Roxbury and Weiss are going to have lines of cars occasionally, not on the regular basis, but when there are these receptions, when it's used as a social hall, when there are some special events for people that they're holding for the studying, because we're seeing this all over the village. So I'm just making that clear because that's what's going to happen. All right. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Now, Mr. Churgan, you heard what Mr. Liebelson said. Is that the way this congregation is going to function? Are they going to be having services multiple times in the morning and the afternoon on all of the Jewish religious holidays and all of these different events that he's referring to.
Study at night till like 8, 9 o'clock or later.
This is a synagogue. It's intended to be used for religious purposes. Nobody's going to hide from that. Nobody's going to lie and say that's not what's going to happen. That's the purpose for this. It's a synagogue.
And a place of study.
Okay?
Okay, nearly maybe most weeknights. I'm just saying that is what you see elsewhere, and that's what will take place. I'm not saying I'm just saying that putting it out there, that the schedule of activity, the impact on this neighborhood, that is a big issue that I haven't heard anyone address yet, so I'm bringing it up and putting it out there. That's all.
There's nothing in the local law number 1 that would prevent any of the activities that you're mentioning.
That's right.
And they are excuse me, they are 100% religious activities.
Whatever. And just one last thing.
Whatever.
One last thing where there was a lot of talk about the hearings. There were 4 public hearings on this law. The first 2 were attended by 800 people. The overwhelming majority of people were opposed to this law. There were over 1,300.
You can't say that.
There were over 1,300 letters filed in opposition. So yet the Board of Trustees chose to dismiss those interests, and this law was pushed through. So that's what that is.
What does that have to do with this application? What does this have to do with this application? It's a law. The law is the law.
I agree. It's an unfortunate fact. The law is the law. That's right.
Well, you see it as an unfortunate fact. There is a whole bunch of people who don't see it as an unfortunate fact.
At the time the law was passed, the majority of people were opposed.
Okay, all right. Let's stop this. Let's stop this comment. We don't need this argument right now.
We should know what type of events also can occur in this sanctuary.
Yeah, they'll have weddings, they'll have bar mitzvahs, they'll have bat mitzvahs, they'll have roofs, they'll have brisses. What did I miss, Mr.
But
Chairman?
it should be, it should be stated, and if it's going to be used 7 days a week, that should also be stated.
In the event of wedding receptions or other social functions are held at the neighborhood place of worship, attendance shall be limited to the capacity of the facility and available on-site parking, as was just stated.
No, but I'm asking whether they indicate that services will be held every day between 6 and 7:30 in the morning, and afternoon services from 4:30 to 6 on Friday night from this time, on the Sabbath from this time, and then a whole list of all the other religious holidays.
Yes, it lists Sunday, Monday through Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I can give you the times if you'd like them.
No, I'll find my copy. I just put it aside because I thought that the August 17th one superseded the January one.
Yeah.
It's item L from the January 22nd letter from Mr. Shaw.
Since you're looking at it, Jeff, does it list that they will have all these other events there, or weddings, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, brisses, roofs?
I'm not seeing that, but I'm sure, Mr. Turgan, am I missing that, or is that not here?
Don't forget classroom and nighttime study. Don't forget the classroom and the study.
Okay, wait, Mr. Levinson, when we heard your comments. We're not having a conversation back and forth. We're discussing this with the board and the applicants.
So just to answer his statements, we say Monday through Thursday, 6:30 a.m. through 8:30 a.m. Okay, and then 8:15 p.m. to 10 p.m. So they are saying they're going to be using it at night during the week. We put that in the narrative. It's there. In terms of what specific...
Does the narrative say how many people?
We're limited to what the occupancy of the building...
Mark, they don't have to say how many people are going to be studying here at 8 o'clock at night. Whatever the capacity of the building is, that's the maximum.
The parking also.
Right.
I just wanted to clarify that to the extent that there are places of worship around the village, none of those were approved by the planning board under this law.
Right, and I think what Mr. Labelson was referring to was places that would technically be illegal. He's just observing what happens there, and he's saying that would happen here, and maybe some of the same events would be there, but it doesn't mean that it would occur the same way, because I don't think they have the parking facilities and the other things that we've proposed, and we're following your law on. And I just want to add one other thing. There were comments that were made. Item Q from our narrative says no cooking facilities are proposed other than a warming kitchen equipment for use of the occupants. No catering facilities are proposed. Okay, so this is a shul. That's what this is.
So if there's a wedding in the shul or synagogue, a wedding service, there would not be a reception there with food.
Well, we're not saying that. We're saying because there would be facilities to warm it, but we're not going to be able to prepare the food there. There's no kitchen. You're not going to have the kind of garbage that I think you heard concerns about.
Right.
What will the traffic study accomplish? We already know that these cul-de-sacs, both of them, are going to receive a tremendous amount of more traffic than they have in the last 43 years. Okay? We already know that. My concern is that excluding special events, because special events always happen and it overflows onto the street. From what I've heard from testimony from the congregation, 50 parking spots doesn't seem to be adequate. And if 50 parking spots are not adequate, what does the congregation, what are they going to do? Where are people going to park? And if they're going to overrun these cul-de-sacs by parking on the street and around the cul-de-sacs, and we've already had a problem on one of our cul-de-sacs in the village to that respect, and we had to put no parking signs down half of the cul-de-sac. But we shouldn't be approving site plans that don't work. So my question is, how do we find out if this plan is going to work? And basically, I mean, are 50 parking spots adequate for this congregation?